Hello, guys. I hope you're doing good. Welcome to another video of the Way Forward podcast. So, today I have a special guest for you guys. Her name is Peg Kinda. She's currently working on her doctorate degree, and she's a graduate of Southwest University here in Minnesota and also an entrepreneur. So, there's a lot of things we can talk about today, and I am excited to introduce her to her. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm doing really well.
That's good.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And like I said earlier, thank you for inviting us into your beautiful home.
Of course.
This is a nice, different setup from what we usually do. So I'm sure the guests are going to notice that, today's setup is different. So
setup, yeah.
all thanks to Peg. It's a nice, beautiful home. So, yeah. So let's get back into the questions. I want to know who's Peg, right? Who is Peg? What's your background? Where you come from? Let us know.
Yeah. So Peg Kinda, I was born and raised in Burkina Faso, West Africa.
Okay.
I came to the U.S. originally for school in 2008.
Okay.
Went to school in Southwest, like you mentioned. Got my bachelor's in marketing and finance out there.
Okay.
And completed my MBA in management as well.
Okay.
And I'm now finishing my doctorate. School is what originally brought me to the U.S.
Okay.
However, business is what kept me around.
Okay.
Shortly after I graduated from college, like any other student, right? You finish college,
Yep.
you're out there looking for a job.
Yep.
And so the first job offered to me was a client accounts coordinator job at a treatment center.
Okay.
So my job was to basically assist clients in figuring out what they would have to pay for treatment.
Okay.
It was for residential treatment. And, as you all know, that racks up rather quickly.
Yep.
And so it was really important for the facility to make sure the patients knew exactly what they were in for, and we would verify their eligibility and benefits.
Yeah.
And based off of, the benefit details the patients had, we would then figure out a payment plan or put together a payment plan for them, and then sit down and kind of break it down for them. As well as, work with them in figuring out, what the best route would be.
Yep.
The ultimate goal was to just kind of make sure that by the time the patients were done with treatment, that the facility would have all of the money owed to them.
Okay.
As luck would have it, now looking back, I think of it as luck. The billing department was super short-staffed.
Okay.
They had, it was two of them in that department, and the billing manager found herself never being able to take any time off.
Ooh.
And, they would talk every now and again, or like even on breaks and whatnot, we would talk about our backgrounds and, what we studied and whatnot. And so she overheard me talking about just different things I knew, or like would see the work that I would do with patients as far as even utilizing Excel and being able to work out those payment plans with the patients.
Yep.
And so she put it in her head that I would be a good candidate in billing, and that she needed to have me in that department as backup.
Okay.
And so she took me under her wing, taught me about, billing and coding and modifiers, authorizations, really walked me through the ins and outs of medical billing.
The medical billing
Absolutely,
world.
yep, as well as even the platform as well. And the platform they were using at the time is called Procentive. They still are around. They've been bought out since, but they did keep the name, although it's under a bigger umbrella
now. Okay.
And then from there I started consulting every here and there with companies that were struggling in billing, that were not looking for a full-time person necessarily, but were struggling enough to where they felt as though they could use an extra set of hands in the department. So I did that for a while. I ended up assisting a third-party billing company as well, because they were looking for help with one of their projects, and that's how I got to get more familiar with the business and behind the scenes
in the world,
and how third-party billing companies were set up. And then I went from there and started my own in 2018, to be exact, October 2018.
Okay, so before we get into the billing, I want to quickly go back. So I want to go back. What I want to do is I want to kind of paint a picture of all of the background stories of
Okay.
who you are as a person first. So
Okay.
one good question that I like to ask is, you mentioned that you're from Burkina Faso
I am.
and you came to the US mostly for study
Yep.
purposes. Now, is there a specific reason why you chose to come to the US? I mean, I know coming from a francophone background, a lot of people would go to France.
Absolutely.
It's easier. You speak the language now. Is there a reason specific why you
Yeah.
guys decided to, US is the spot?
Yeah. So I graduated from high school early, 16 and a half, 17 years old. And I think my parents were not quite comfortable sending me abroad because of how young I was, at least
Okay.
not right away. And there was this program at the time out of Dakar, Senegal. And it was a branch out of Suffolk University. It was a
Okay.
test program, basically, that they were, doing out there. So the goal was to have, students from all of West Africa
Okay.
attend the school for a couple of years.
Okay.
And then once you were done with that school, the goal was to then graduate to the Boston branch of Suffolk University. However, I only spent 1 year at the school, by the way. I learned rather quickly and
There you
I
go.
transferred after a year. But I had met some friends from the school that were a year ahead of me. So they completed the program and they transferred to Southwest Minnesota. And we kept in touch, right?
Okay.
And so they would tell me about how beautiful it was. They would tell me it
They,
was just...
they would tell you
it
how
was-
beautiful Southwest Minnesota
oh
is.
my gosh, yes. Now looking back, I know it was a setup for sure. They would tell me about how it was just like LA and New York.
They tell you about the
And-
snow too.
Oh, no, they told me the weather was beautiful. It
Of
was
course.
great weather. It was like LA or New York. To their credit, it was just them wanting to make sure I would, join them in Southwest. But yeah, so then I kept in touch with them,
Okay.
and because they were already out here, I decided to apply to that
So
school.
so then did you come here as an F1?
I did.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So I know quite a few people that are in this country as F1 students currently.
Yeah.
Now, help me. How'd you navigate that world? I mean, and it's quite an interesting world. Between the CPTs and the OPTs
Oh my
and
goodness,
the
yes.
PTs. How was it navigating that world?
Okay, well, so my first job at the school was I was basically working for the janitor. So I would sweep and mop
Yep.
and vacuum,
Was this
the
on
dorms.
campus?
On campus.
Okay, on
Yes,
campus. There you
absolutely,
go.
on
Yeah.
campus. So that was my very first job. But even in going to school in Dakar,
Mm-hmm.
I have always been very involved.
Okay.
I actually was a lot more involved when it comes to just being out and about in the community and wanting to make a difference. I mean, these days of all the businesses, I'm not able to be out there as much. But I actually was elected as president of the student government.
Nice.
And I was the first female president
There you go.
of that school. And so then transferred to Marshall, and I was a senator in the student body. I was involved in the international student organization. So I would also be able to obtain. I've gotten some scholarships
Nice.
as a result of just being involved in that way.
So you're a good student overall.
I was. No, I
There
was
you
a
go.
great.
Good.
When it came to school, it was like a personal thing for me. I
That's
mean,
good.
if you find any of my old classmates, anyone that we've had a group project with,
Yep.
they would tell you. I mean, we would literally be in front of the class, and I would call you out if you did not do the work.
Nice.
I
Wow.
mean, it was personal. Like I was here with purpose.
Nice. There you go. Nice.
But yeah, and then my marketing, because I have my bachelor's in marketing and finance, but my marketing professor, we ended up building a really nice relationship. I was
Nice.
always, I had always had the best grades in his class, and we would always talk. And he ended up referring me for a job at Kmart. And so he would sign my paperwork and allow for me to work, and it would be like an internship.
And then now you're working outside of
Exactly,
campus,
yeah.
making a little bit more money than those that are on campus.
Exactly.
There you go.
And the thing too is, if you work in school, once the school is out, you don't always have those same opportunities
Yep.
because you may or may not have a job.
Yep.
Oftentimes not. But with being able to work off campus that way, thanks to my teacher,
That was nice.
I was able to just kind of
So-
work all year round.
So what did you tell your friend when you got here and realized it was really
No, I
cold.
was asking them. I was like, so where's Rodeo Drive and where's the Statue of Liberty? And I'm like looking around and I'm like, okay, well,
Where's the Hollywood sign?
exactly. I'm like, let's go, shopping, take a picture. It was nothing like what they sold
Oh
me.
man, Minnesota would do that to you.
Oh my goodness. But I was already here, so I made the best of it. And
That's
then
good.
the funny thing is, a year after all that, because they were, ahead of me in school or whatever, they all transferred to other schools. They went to Texas and like all the warmer
Wow.
states
Of
and left me
course.
behind,
Wow.
after all of this. So
Then that means you can't complain about Minnesota weather then
I,
because you chose to stay because now
I
you're here
suppose.
for it.
And
That's
I
good.
was here, so I was like, I might as well make the best of it.
There you
The
go.
school was super small, which made it to where you did not have as many distractions,
Okay.
Your focus was just, you go to school, you study. If you had a little job on the side, sure, that's fine. But, there was nothing else to do but study and
That
then
was my feeling I had
yeah.
with Mankato too. I mean,
Yeah.
Mankato was known for a party school, but I mean, I just felt like it was a little bit better than going to the U of M, which
Oh my
was like
goodness.
center city.
Yeah.
Everything is there. I was like, you know
Yeah.
what? Let me go to Mankato. I mean,
Absolutely.
there's it's a little bit of nowhere.
Yeah.
Kind
Yeah.
of keep myself in check a little bit.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's
Absolutely.
good. Wow,
Yeah.
that's good. So then, how do we go? So then, how do you get this? You come here,
Yeah.
first, and where does the marketing, bachelor in marketing comes in? Like were you always interested in doing marketing or
Yes.
MBA or?
And what's funny is I think it just sounded cool to me.
Ah,
That's
got
what
it.
I would say about it. Like in high school and whatnot, it was like a new concept. At least to me, it was new.
Okay.
When I was in high school, but I kept hearing, marketing, 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 and to me, it sounded so cool. And I, put it in my head that that's what I would do. However, I also felt as though I needed to have a solid background in numbers or like a solid basis when it comes to at least the numbers and just to kind of have that balance, right?
Yep.
Because marketing is great, but it's not always promised. It was still new at the time, and not that many companies were open to invest.
No one knew it was gonna be this big.
Absolutely,
Yep.
invest in that at the time. So I made sure to also get a degree in finance
Yep.
just as backup. And then as far as the MBA goes, in Marshall at the time, it was either getting an MBA or getting a master's in education, and I did not want to teach or do anything that had to do with education necessarily. And then management. But I was
Okay.
getting my MBA in management anyway. So
Okay.
yeah. So that's why I went that route.
Okay. So then, just to clarify, you did two bachelors or just
I did
so
two
it's two
bachelors,
bachelors. So
yeah.
one bachelor was in you had your MBA.
Correct.
And then you also had
Yeah. So I have a bachelor's in marketing and a bachelor's in finance,
nice.
as well as an MBA with a concentration in management.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Lots of numbers.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
good. That's
yeah,
good.
Yeah.
So then, as an international student,
Yeah.
doing these majors, what do you recall as some challenges that you may have come across? And I'm looking at it from a lens of being an international student
Yeah.
in the U.S. Obviously, we
Yeah.
haven't even touched the aspect of English not being your first language first.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like, looking at this, what were some challenges that you remember? Like, oh man, I really wish somebody told me about this.
Yeah.
And, now I'm happy to tell someone else who's coming in
Yeah.
about this.
Yeah. One thing I wish I had done more of was maybe a little more research
Okay.
into the state,
Okay.
as well as the city
Okay.
and the school. I
Okay.
mean, I don't regret it. It ended up working out, but I wish I knew more.
Okay.
As far as what to expect. So that was one. That was one thing that was challenging. It was more so. It was nothing like what I had envisioned. It wasn't bad.
Yeah.
But it wasn't what I thought it would be like.
Okay.
So I would say that's one thing. And of course, not all of us have, heavy accents but I did have and still do have an accent that did play a role, even in, projects for school or having to stand up and speak. So that was a little bit of a barrier, there. And then opportunities as well, when it comes to, navigating the scholarship world.
Yep.
Or even, being aware of how important, having some sort of experience,
Yep.
even if it's super small. Internship, being around others that, have been there for a while, that could like teach you a thing or two about, just how a professional setup, what the professional setup looks like, and how to behave in a professional setting, what to expect, and
I feel like those things came very late because there weren't a lot of I guess we'll call them career advisor or career training or career fair, like
correct.
on how would a normal college student coming out of college should behave on a professional setting. There wasn't a lot of those things offered back then, but I remember them being a lot more offered and being pushed on students because, hey, you're important, you're graduating, you got to get to this level, you got to do this, you can't do that. So that's
and even how to like market yourself, or like how to approach people, the differences, and just the cultures.
Do you guys have to do the elevator speech too?
In some of the classes we did.
There you go.
Yeah. But even that was just a little bit of a learning curve there. Because it was nothing like we've ever done before.
That's the thing too.
And
outside of not speaking the language, you imagining yourself cornering some CEO in the elevator trying to make a pitch for a business you're trying to do. Hey, I can't even think of the words that I'm trying to tell you right now, but I know I got 30 seconds before you get to your next stairs. It's like, man, that sounds stressful.
Yeah, and trying to make that mark and how to position yourself when you have those opportunities. Yeah, those are all things that I wish I had known more about.
That's good. Wow. Yeah. I mean, these are honestly good knowledge that are not available to kids nowadays.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, it's like, take advantage of as much as knowledge as you can, because the world is shifting to a different. Yeah. It's like it used to be cool to have a bachelor's degrees back in the days. Now, I mean, you get away without it because there's thousands of boot camps out there.
Absolutely.
There's courses that you can take, especially if you're going into the tech world. It's like, it's like you can do a certification in this, certification in that, and employers, as long as they look on your resume and they see that you have the certification that they're looking for, they're like, you're the person for the job. And it's so. Quick question for you then: how different of a culture is it for coming from a francophone culture where everything is very diploma oriented, right?
That's right.
Diploma oriented.
Yeah.
It's like back home, you go and look for a job. It's like, let me see your diploma.
Absolutely. That's where they start.
Where did you go to school? That's the first question I ask you.
Yeah.
And coming into the country where it's like, you paid thousands of dollars to go to college, but we're not really going to ask about it. We're going to ask about the experience that you do.
Correct.
Like, how was that for you?
And I did not realize that until way later on. Like, when I first got here, the focus was still getting the best grades, getting as many degrees as you possibly can, because in my head, still at the time, that's all that will matter.
Yep.
And that is why when I said school was like such a personal thing to me. I remember one time one of my teachers gave me a B in marketing.
Ooh.
And I was was it marketing or management? Either marketing or management. But I was so used to always getting A's or like A minus. I mean, and I went back to Africa on vacation, and then they posted the grades. When I tell you, I came back and I had to go see her, and I was like, this is not I emailed her from there, but then I came back and I went to her office.
Yep.
Requested an appointment, and I told her it was not acceptable and I deserved more than a B. To this day, she and I will still talk. Her name was is Denise Goshner.
She must have been like, the nerve of this girl.
Yeah, and she's Jamaican. But yeah, no, I demanded that she changes my grade. We went back and forth. I was like, I did not miss anything. I mean, look at all of my grades prior. How could you give me a B? Made no sense. But yeah, so I still had, for the longest time I had
that mentality of like the diploma is the way to.
Correct.
America is interesting.
Yeah. But when I think about it too, it does make sense, right? Yeah. It does. It's one thing to go out there and have the diploma, but it's like you don't know what they've had to do necessarily to get it.
Yep.
Whereas someone that walks in the door and they've been doing that same thing for like so many years, or even a couple of years, you're not going to have to train them on how to even access the system. That's like one less thing to worry about. They'll be able to log in. All you have to now train them on is more so how you like things done. Whereas a kid out of school, there's a lot more to teach them.
It's it's even outside of even being understanding of what you went to school for and applying it on an everyday.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you even behave as an employee first? Like, like what do you not do? All right,
Yeah.
when you get that step,
Yeah.
all right, here's how you log in into a computer.
Correct.
Here's,
Yeah, like
it's
the basic stuff.
yeah, that's like very basic
Yeah.
stuff.
And to me, that's why it is so important to, when you start school, to really have that student mentality.
Yep.
And it's not just about the grades and, schoolwork, which is important too. But you gotta be a student in like other aspects
Yep.
too.
Yep.
Like in life overall, like how to best communicate
Yep.
with, people in your environment.
Yep.
What's the best approach when it comes to dealing with them? What works? What has worked for others?
Yep.
Like always humble yourself and
Yep.
really take the time to study and learn, even outside of school.
Yep.
Study how they communicate,
Yeah.
how they approach things, how they do things, and be an all-around student of life.
Nice.
And
nice.
you would be surprised.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That was some nice knowledge you
Yeah,
dropped there.
yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Yeah.
So I want to start diving into a little bit of the background on a medical billing company that you have, right? So here we're doing a shift. We're coming from marketing, MBA. I mean, although it's close, but it's not that. It's So like outside of the story that you gave us, if you can emphasize on specific moment that actually you had an aha moment. Oh, actually, I like doing this better. I want to do this better.
Yeah.
Was there a specific moment that kind of linked you now to this world specifically of medical billing?
Again, just I stumbled upon it. It's that one billing manager that told me she wanted to train me on billing, and then the rest is history. And what's funny is the company that I started with a couple of years ago, they called my company wanting to hire us to help them on like just like a one-time project they had. And so it did come full circle in that way. But also the first software that I learned how to bill on, they invited me out to their conference this past summer, and I got to speak at their conference.
Nice.
Yeah, so I went to just me, being out
Nice.
there learning how to build, like a new platform to me. And now I'm speaking at the actual conference where they have,
Nice.
the product users.
Oh, that's cool. That's
and,
cool.
teaching them how to like best navigate the platform. So a lot of things that way have come full circle.
So you by the time, so if they invite you back to a conference, that means you've used their system for quite a while, where you've gotten
It's the
so
first
much
system.
experience.
Yeah.
That they're like, you know what, we should probably have this one
Absolutely.
because she understands. That's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
cool to know.
Did not go to school for it. If you would have told me in college I would be in medical billing, I did not even know what that was.
Wow.
And so I did not envision it, but I do think I found my thing. I think
Nice.
this is what I was meant to be.
That's how most people spend most of their life looking. So
I
that's
know,
good.
and
That's good.
and that you go to school, and that happens to a lot of people, right? Where you go to school for one thing, and then they end up hiring you for something else, or you might end up falling in love with something
In another,
else.
yep.
And yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah, I
all right.
can't see myself doing anything else.
That's good.
Yeah,
All right. So then let's go into where does the idea of coming up with a business comes
Yeah.
from, right? When did you actually decide that, okay, I've done this long enough that, all right, I think I'm ready to launch my own thing,
Yeah.
right? When did you realize it, and how did you go about it?
yeah. Again, here I would say that is where the concept of being a student at life is so important.
Okay.
I've always been really good at surrounding myself with people that have great heads on their shoulders.
Okay.
And I did have a lot of entrepreneur friends.
Nice. Okay.
And in a lot of if you speak to an entrepreneur, or anyone that has had any success in entrepreneurship, or like a true entrepreneur, they could not see themselves doing anything else outside of that. So I had so many around me that felt so strongly about building something for yourself. and that I've done well at that.
Yep.
That would always, be in the back of my head because they knew that I was consulting and doing this and that. And the feedback I was getting from providers and others out there was, how helpful what I was doing to them was.
Nice.
And so that combined with, just friends in my ears about, it's about time, just go for it and start at. And then, you start and you don't know it all. Like there's so much I've learned after I started. If you are waiting to learn everything there is to know about a business or business to start, you're going to be talking about the same thing at retirement age.
Yep.
You're not going to start. And so, so I just went for it.
Nice.
I started, I called the state, I asked them how to file.
Yep.
They walked me through the process, sent me the paperwork, I filled it out, sent it to them.
And that was to get the license to
get registered as a business in
That's
Minnesota.
just getting registered as a business. Got it. Because outside of medical billing, do you need a specific license to be able to be in that world? I mean, I'm thinking about, okay, like let's say someone wants to do real estate, for example, right? You have to have an actual realtor license.
Correct.
Outside of registering your business,
Yeah.
is that similar?
No, you don't need a license per se. You do. It's always nice to have certificates.
Okay.
Because it helps kind of build your credibility.
Okay.
If you are certified in medical billing or coding, that always helps. But we don't need a license per se.
Nice.
To
Okay.
be medical billers.
So next question that comes to mind.
Yeah.
All right. For the average person that has no clue
Yeah.
what medical billing is.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about. Everything that's happening is gibberish. I don't know what you mean. How do you dumb it down for them? What is medical billing?
Yeah. Okay. So let me think of a way to break it down to where it will be as easily understood as possible. Anyone that is in this country, whether you are an F1 student or out there working, you have health insurance, right?
Yeah.
If, unfortunately you've had to go to a clinic or a hospital to be seen or checked for anything, you bring your card to the hospital.
Yep.
That hospital, they take your card, they scan it in the system, they enter your information, they see you for the services, but they need to get paid for the services.
Okay.
So there are two ways for clinics, hospitals, or any providers out there to get paid.
Okay.
Some of that comes from the patients themselves.
You pay cash.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If they have a copay, that's how it works, right? You walk in, they'll verify, look you up in the system, and they'll let you know if you have a copay, how much the copay is, and have you pay it. Most people know when they have a copay. Some no, but a lot of people do. So then you have that piece of it.
Okay.
However, in addition to that, they do also need to get paid by the insurance company.
Because your copay obviously doesn't cover everything.
Absolutely, right?
So it's called copay.
Yeah, absolutely, right? Yeah. So then you have to go to the insurance company and have them pay you for the services you provided. And that's where we come in.
Okay.
We have to submit the bills in question to the insurances.
Okay.
But you cannot just send them a note, I've seen this patient today, here's what I've seen them for, and then have them pay you.
Okay.
It has to be on specific forms.
Okay.
It has to be coded according to whatever the issue was. But you also need to diagnose the patient before you even see them, which is also called the diagnosis code.
Okay.
All of that does need to go on the form in question that then gets sent out to the insurances.
Okay.
So that's where that's what I do.
So then you are mostly in the middle. You're between the insurance and the provider.
Absolutely.
And then obviously I'm assuming that big hospitals, like let's say, anyways, I'm not going to name anybody here, but big hospitals have their own medical billing in-house.
Correct.
But do you guys also work with these big companies, or you mostly focus on smaller clinics and stuff like that?
We do have a lot of smaller clinics.
Okay.
We have a couple bigger hospitals.
Okay.
But it is true that a lot of the bigger hospitals like to have their own internal teams. But we get phone calls from them even and asking us to kind of come in and kind of help them clean up their accounts if they happen to have a lot of claims that they have not been able to collect on or are struggling with, or sometimes they happen to be short-staffed and are not able to keep up. And so we do get those phone calls too. But I would say mostly small to mid-sized companies is who we work with.
Okay, and then most of the time you're just saying, hey, hospital A sent, this is what they did to patient A. This is the bill or whatever. You send it to the insurance. And then once it's sent to the insurance, your job is done. Do you do anything on a customer level or no? On a patient level?
Well, yes.
Okay.
And the job is not done there because you would be surprised how many claims will come back rejected, denied, can't pay, won't pay, system is down, so we did not even receive your claim to begin with. I mean, there's like so much and so many layers that go into what we do.
Okay.
Or they may say, well, this was not even authorized. You did not send us an authorization request. And so not oftentimes, but every now and again, we do have to go back and obtain what we call a retro authorization, which means it's after the fact.
Yep.
Or they may say, well, you needed to add a modifier on the claim. It wasn't there, so we go fix it or denied. So we do have to pay attention because they will send it back and they only give you so long to correct whatever they are saying is wrong on the claim. And if you don't do it within that time,
you can't claim them.
You cannot. You would
insurance companies, man.
No, you would be surprised at how much money a lot of clinics, hospitals, unfortunately, have to write off. Wow. It's insane, which makes it to where we are needed.
Okay.
But it's really, really unfortunate. The battle that we go through to get providers pay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you're just in the middle. You're doing your thing. My next question that I want to ask is, all right, is there a limit? I don't want to say is there a limit, but obviously there are a lot of codes, like medical codes out there. Like I'm not expecting you guys to memorize all of them, but I know the DSM, for example, for diagnosing people has a book of
Absolutely.
Everything. Like, is that similar to the medical coding?
Yes. Yeah.
Or is a whole book of coding?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
There are so many. I mean, there are so many illnesses too when you think about it.
Exactly.
And so, I would say for the most part, we do have the certain codes we usually use. Or use a lot. Yeah, like we use a lot. Or depending on the hospital too or the services, there may be certain codes that they use a lot more. And then some of the other codes, every now and again you might see something come through and you have to do some research because you may not have
never seen this one.
Yeah, you're like, this one is new, okay. Then you go back to the drawing board and do some research and call around or read, go through the books and figure out what the right code is. Yeah.
That is very fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, so you guys work with the hospitals. The hospital usually will send you the information, but in most cases, do they not send you the codes as well, or like, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, how does the hospital reports, a patient care with you guys? Like, that's a specific form too? And then do they include the code, or do they just say, hey, we saw patient A, Y, and Z, his eyes was like this and his head was like this. All right, here you have it. And then you have to go and find what code corresponds to that specific illness.
We have some cases like that where all they would do is just the note, and then we have to take the note and figure out what the right code is, or even the diagnosis.
Wow.
But we also have, for a lot of our systems, we set it up to where the codes are entered along with the description. So all they need to do is type in whatever the illness is, and then it will pre-populate and it will have a corresponding code to the illness, and then you select it, and then the CPT code also gets populated. You save it.
I see.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
So then I want to say then, looking at this from my lens of not being in the world, it sounds like a very complicated world, right? Outside of that, we've seen what has happened with, CEO United Healthcare.
Absolutely.
How affected were you by this news, right? But what happened? I mean, and if you weren't affected, this is just what happened. I mean, it's messed up. That's it, and we move on. But like, did that affect anything in your world specifically in terms of how things are done, or in the way people see, or?
Not in my world specifically. I would say I have seen some claims from that insurance company. I've gotten some phone calls where they were, letting us know that they would go back and reprocess claims.
Okay.
So the backlash, I think, has
Some effect.
Yes, yep.
Some
Has
positive
had them
effect.
rethink some of
Okay.
the policies. I would say that. But even beyond that, what I would say is the conversation that was started as a result has been great.
That's yeah, definitely.
Anyone that is not in this world, or is not behind the scenes at a hospital or clinic, may not even fully
You
grasp
know.
how complex and
Yeah.
difficult
It's a
at
tough. Yeah.
times
It's
our jobs are, just trying to get paid for the work you put in.
yeah.
When I tell you, I have providers that go 4 months trying to get paid on a claim, 4 6 months. And my response all the time is, in what world do you go to a job and work
For
and then
four
wait
months
for
you
six
haven't got
months to get paid?
exactly.
I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. And
Man, I'm like, now it gets me thinking. I'm like,
yeah.
what possible reason would you have not to? Okay, here's the claim. Like, do you need proof that we actually saw the patient? Should we take a
It's all
selfie with the kid? It's
documented.
like that's what I'm
No,
saying.
it's
It's
all
like
documented.
it's like,
And the EOBs go to the patient. So you
that's it.
cannot, yeah, there are cases out there where it might be made up. In every field, there's going to be some individuals
Of
that might try to
course,
take shortcuts. But for the most part,
it's straight up
right.
business.
For the most part, you send the claim, the EOB goes to the patient. The patient, they will call you if they have not been seen.
Yep.
That's nothing they want on their record if,
Yep.
they have not actually received the service.
Yep.
And so,
Wow.
yeah.
Fascinating world.
Yeah.
So I want to dive into now the entrepreneurship of things, right?
Yeah.
Obviously you launching this business, what has been some challenges, overall, what has been notable challenges that you can share with the audience, say,
Yeah.
this is something that
Yeah.
I kind of struggle with, and you can also on the flip side give us some positive moments.
Oh, yeah.
Some yay, this was great moments
Yeah.
that happened.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say at first, like as I just started, and I learned so much as I went on.
Okay.
I mean, the first barrier was, of course, getting clients, right? If you're in business, you want clients, which I was consulting here and there, and I had, like I would say, a few that will always, come to me and like, ask me for, for consulting. But signing actual clients under my business, that took a little bit of time. I had to drive around. I remember printing out or having some guy work on brochures for me, and I would drive around to like different clinics. So, yes, handing and asking for the manager.
Oh, man.
I've done that. Yep. And that actually, I don't think I ever really got a phone call back from that. It may work for some people. Maybe I just did not run into the right people. But I did that for a while, and then. But the great thing with me is I was always good at building connections, right?
Okay, nice.
And keeping in touch with anyone that I, may have worked with in the past. And so my first client was actually referred to me by a girl I used to work with. Yep. And so she knew I was starting my business, and she called me and she said, well, I have someone that is looking for help. Would you be willing to talk to them? And so I called them and I signed my first client.
Nice.
Yep. And then let's see. And then one time, actually, when I started, I was working fully from my home. I remember being at home, and then some guy was knocking on my door. And then I go and I open the door, and not even dressed up professionally, and I say hi to him, and he goes, yeah, I saw you online, and this is the address that came up, and I'm looking for help.
Oh God. Not scary.
I know, and I'm looking for help. Word of advice: if you are starting a business, don't put your home address out there. It's not safe.
Yeah.
I did that though.
Hey, I mean,
You
it's
live
part
and
of the
learn,
struggle.
right?
I
You
mean,
live and learn, yeah. So then that was my second client.
Nice.
His partner though, and I ended up building a really good relationship.
Nice.
She was also a provider. When I tell you, she alone referred probably over 20 providers to me. I had a built-in marketing person that I was not paying. Because on the weekend, she would be on Facebook, on like, all providers have like the Facebook groups and whatnot.
Nice,
And
nice
anyone
of
that
her.
would say anything about, oh, my billing, I'm like struggling, or I need help. She would
your
like,
girl.
call this person, she's so nice, or us, she will help you. And so, yeah, and then the phone calls started coming.
Nice.
And I would say for the first few years, it was literally just word of mouth. That's how I grew.
Nice.
It was just, going above and beyond for providers. providers, not making it necessarily always about the profit, but more so the work first.
Yep, the work
And
first.
then,
Because that's what brings them back.
absolutely, yeah. So then, so word of mouth for a while. And I would say as of the past couple of years, I started putting myself out there a lot more as far as, networking
Yep.
or being out in the community. So I would say that was the first struggle. It's just getting the trust.
Yep, the trust of
But all it takes is just one or two that work with, work for, help out, and do a good job at.
Yep.
And then they talk.
And then
People,
they talk.
they love to talk.
Yes, they will.
I mean, who doesn't like to be able to say, you have a problem, I can solve it, or I know
Yep.
someone that can solve it for
Yep,
you.
yep, yep.
And so I would say that was one challenge is, just first getting to grow and getting clients. The second challenge was staffing,
Ooh.
hiring. Oh my goodness.
This
Hiring
world we
and
live
hiring
in.
the right people. I would say though, here again, perhaps it's luck. I call it luck. But one of my providers had a few admins that were working for him.
Okay.
One of them did not work out.
Okay.
But she would always call me with like different things. Or this, patient needs this. Or can you verify? So she and I also built a bond in that way. And so when it ended up not working out, I asked her if she was looking for a job. That's at a time where I also was really growing and really was unable to keep up with it all. I got to the point where it's like, okay, I need help. I can't.
Need help. Yep.
And so I asked her, and she was on vacation at the time in California. But she told me, she goes, well, when I'm back in town, I'll come by and we'll talk.
Nice.
And so I hired her, my first employee, and she actually referred 3 of her friends to me.
Nice.
Actually 4. 4 of her friends she referred to me.
Nice.
Some it worked out, some it did not. But I would say over the years, it's, just a learning curve of being careful about who you hire, because, at times you hire because you do need the help, and then they come in and actually create more work.
More problems.
So, I've had those struggles. So that's been a challenge I've had to overcome, as well as always making sure we have the right balance, right? Because on any given day, I get so many phone calls. I could get 5 phone calls today, and it's all new clients. They all want to get started as soon as possible. And usually when providers call me, they want to get started
right away.
Some, there's a little bit of a delay, but usually they're like, I'm like, I need money now. Like, I'm not collecting. I'm not going to make it. Can you start like today?
Okay.
And so, so that's been another thing. And it constantly is trying to make sure we always, if I'm getting 5 more today, sometimes you don't know how much work necessarily either until you actually log in.
Dive in. Yeah.
So it's, looking around, hiring, and, making sure you have resources lined up to where the team is not going to struggle. Because ultimately, if there's no balance, you're going to have some problems.
That makes sense.
So that's a constant challenge too, I would say.
Okay.
Positive, we've gotten so much recognition from the community.
Nice.
We've gotten a couple awards for the Better Business Bureau.
Nice.
We just, this past weekend, I actually was at the Woodbury Chamber of Commerce Gala, where we had been nominated for Business of the Year. And so that was nice. So we've had that. We've been featured in a couple magazines. So it's just the feedback from providers or people out there in the community. That's what keeps you going on, like, especially the hard days. Sometimes you just want someone to be like, you know what, you're doing good. You're doing good. You're being helpful. You're helping providers out there. What you do matters. And then, you have enough in you to just,
That's really
keep
good.
moving along.
That's good. I mean, we're glad to hear that,
Absolutely.
These positive stories, success stories.
Oh my gosh.
As well as the struggles too, because I think a lot of people will not find themselves, actually a lot of entrepreneurs will not find themselves being good employees. But then when they flip to the other side, they are thriving and they're doing everything. You look from the outside and you say, you're working way much than you were working when you were working at your regular job, but yet you're still enjoying, because there's a certain ownership about, it's your baby, and you can go on it for like hours and hours and hours.
And you can always tell too, like, I've had some really bright individuals work for me. But you can tell when they're not motivated.
Yeah.
They could go on and probably do really well at entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
But any job they have, they're gonna slack because they just don't care enough.
It's just that
But
there's
brilliant. When I tell
yeah.
you they could put processes in place and
Nice.
and you want to keep them around and have them help you run
Yep.
things, but their heart is
It's
never
nice.
gonna be fully in it.
Whew, man,
So
that is tough.
no, it is. It really, and it's so unfortunate when you see so much potential and you could really help them make a difference, but it's not theirs.
Yeah.
And so there's never gonna be that level of motivation there, and you can always tell.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
good.
it
Well,
shows.
all right. So now I want to dive back now into a little bit of advice giving, right? So for anyone who is interested in getting into medical billing specifically, or even in general as an entrepreneur, what would you tell them? What advice would you give them?
I would say just start. When it comes to being an entrepreneur, and it's so cliche because you hear it a lot, and you may or may not want to believe it, but just start. And sometimes you don't see the full picture, but you start and then you start moving, and then before you know it, the pieces will fall together.
Yep.
Now, when it comes to medical billing, I would say make sure you have some sort of basis.
Okay.
That is so important because ultimately, as you grow, you're going to want to hire staff members, but you have to be able to really know or understand what's happening behind the scenes
Okay.
to be able to supervise at the level you need to
You need to-
supervise
yep.
things at. You would be, in our world, I mean, you already are fighting against entities that at times it feels as though they don't want to pay you anyways. They're trying to find any reason to not pay you.
Any reason
I'm
not
not
to
saying
pay
that's
you.
the case. Sometimes it
It feels that way.
It feels that way. And so the last thing you need is for your staff to miss one thing or decide they wanna, it's quicker to do it this way or just submit blindly. Once you submit and it's wrong, the mess you will find yourself in
Oof.
trying to go back and correct it. And then you have your providers on your back they have to pay their mortgage, they have to pay their office space,
Yeah.
they have to make payroll,
It's tough.
and they're counting on you to bring that money in. I mean, talk about stress on both ends. So I would say at least take the time to make sure you learn the basics of
Okay.
medical billing, as well as find trustworthy people.
Okay.
Yeah, surround yourself with trustworthy people that are there for the right reasons and actually want to do the work. Yeah, and then network. Network.
Yo,
if you
network
can.
is a big thing.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard when you're first starting out to find the time because you gotta work still,
Yep.
and you're doing it all yourself, and so it's not always easy to find the time to put yourself out there. But even if it's one day a week, they have events, networking events, even on the weekend.
Yep.
Even if it's just one day a week, find it in you to just go out there, shake some hands. The things I've learned, not even about being able to close on a client, but even the knowledge I gain from others out there just in networking
Yep,
and them
and
letting me
networking
know
is
how
important.
they do things internally
Yep.
or share things with me. That has helped me so much.
You
I
learned a
can't
thing or two.
think of one event I've been to where I have not learned something from.
There you go.
I always learn at least one thing.
Yep.
And yeah, so
That's
what I
good.
would say.
That's good.
Yeah.
So in this show, I like to give entrepreneurs the opportunity to give themselves a shout out or give their business a shout out
Absolutely.
as a promo thing. So, you have the floor. Anything, any business, anything you want to say. Here's the camera.
Yeah.
Go get the people.
Absolutely. So my main thing right now is reliable billing. We offer not just medical billing services, we also offer contracting, credentialing, licensing, as well as some consulting in medical billing. And so that is really the services we offer under the umbrella of reliable billing. As of this year, I am starting out a staffing company. It's called MN Staffing, Minnesota Staffing Agency. You can find us online. And so there's that. And also opening up a clinic is called Right Quest Recovery in late March, at the end of March, in Brooklyn Park. So yeah.
Wow, busy
Yeah,
lady.
absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, Thank you again, Peg, for
Yeah.
taking part of such a wonderful
Yeah.
show. I think I had a wonderful time listening to your
Yeah.
story.
No, this was
Thank you
great.
for sharing.
Yeah.
And to you guys at home, thank you guys for tuning in. Again, as I always say, make sure you get connected. We're on YouTube, we're on TikTok, we are on, whatever platform you think of. We are on there. Make sure you share, you follow, subscribe the page. And until next time, thank you guys. Bye bye.